He was an empath. She was a narcissist. The relationship nobody talks about. He was the man who felt everything, while she mastered hiding almost everything inside. He noticed her mood changes, while she noticed every opportunity for control around him. At first, their connection felt extraordinary because his empathy made her feel deeply understood. She seemed mysterious, wounded, passionate, and intensely attracted to his patience and emotional availability. He believed his compassion could create safety where she had only known emotional chaos. She discovered something else entirely, someone willing to understand her without demanding immediate accountability. That difference transformed their beautiful beginning into a relationship filled with confusion and exhaustion. He listened to her pain, even when her pain became another weapon against him. Whenever she felt insecure, he reassured her, hoping reassurance would finally calm everything down. But reassurance never seemed enough because her emotional needs constantly moved beyond his reach. He began apologizing for problems he never created, simply because peace mattered deeply to him. She learned that his empathy made him question himself before questioning her behavior deeply. An empath often searches for reasons behind harmful behavior before deciding someone deserves distance. A narcissistic partner can exploit patience by turning every confrontation into another emotional mystery. Suddenly, his legitimate pain became evidence that he supposedly lacked understanding or compassion entirely. He started explaining himself repeatedly, while she became increasingly comfortable judging his emotional reactions. The relationship became exhausting because he was constantly solving problems she kept creating repeatedly. He thought deeper communication would repair things, but communication cannot repair intentional emotional manipulation. Eventually, he noticed something terrifying. Conversations ended peacefully only when he surrendered his boundaries. Every boundary became an argument, every disagreement became rejection, and every consequence became cruelty. He slowly stopped trusting his instincts because she repeatedly challenged what he clearly experienced. When someone constantly invalidates your perception, even obvious behavior can begin feeling strangely uncertain. He wondered whether he was too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional, or simply impossible. Meanwhile, she appeared completely different around friends, family, coworkers, and strangers outside their relationship. Others saw charm, confidence, generosity, and charisma, making his private experiences difficult to explain. That isolation made him cling harder because he felt nobody would understand his reality. He kept remembering her good moments and used them to excuse increasingly painful patterns. Every beautiful memory became evidence that perhaps their relationship could somehow return to normal. He wasn't staying because everything was wonderful. He was staying because hope remained powerful. But hope becomes dangerous when it asks you to ignore what reality keeps showing. He finally understood that empathy without boundaries becomes self-abandonment disguised as unconditional love. He had spent so much energy understanding her that he gradually stopped understanding himself. His emotional world became organized around preventing her reactions instead of expressing his needs. He monitored his words, timing, tone, and even his facial expressions constantly around her. He became careful because ordinary honesty could suddenly trigger anger, withdrawal, accusations, or contempt. That is how emotional exhaustion develops gradually, without one dramatic moment announcing its arrival. You wake up one morning, realizing your relationship requires constant emotional survival from you. He began feeling lonely while sitting beside someone he desperately wanted to feel close. The cruelest part was knowing he had given her exactly what he once needed. He offered patience, reassurance, loyalty, forgiveness, and emotional presence without receiving consistent emotional safety. Eventually, his nervous system began treating ordinary interactions like potential threats to his peace. He anticipated conflict before conflict happened because unpredictability had become part of their connection. His empathy remained, but his emotional capacity slowly became depleted through repeated unresolved cycles. Then something inside him changed when he finally stopped trying to prove his intentions. He stopped explaining every feeling and started observing her responses without immediately defending himself. For the first time, he noticed patterns instead of isolated incidents that confused him. He saw affection followed by distance, closeness followed by criticism, and promises ending disappointingly. He realized occasional tenderness could not erase consistent emotional instability within their relationship anymore. This realization hurt because accepting reality meant grieving the future he had once imagined. He wasn't only losing her, he was losing the version of himself who kept hoping. That grief can feel enormous because empathetic people often mourn potential alongside actual relationships. They don't just remember what happened, they remember what could have happened someday together. He finally understood that loving someone does not guarantee their ability to love safely. Compassion can explain someone's wounds, but compassion cannot force someone to change their behavior. Understanding someone's trauma should never require you to become the target of unresolved pain. He began rebuilding boundaries slowly, starting with simple decisions about what he would accept. He stopped negotiating with disrespect and stopped treating emotional punishment as evidence of love. His silence was no longer designed to make her chase him or fear losing him. His distance became something different: protection for the parts of himself he had neglected. That distinction changed everything because detachment is not always revenge. Sometimes it is recovery. She noticed his emotional withdrawal and suddenly became more interested in restoring the connection. But he no longer responded to intensity the same way he had before emotionally. He wanted consistency now, not dramatic apologies followed by identical behavior afterward consistently again. He wanted accountability without excuses, affection without manipulation, and communication without emotional punishment anymore. Most importantly, he wanted relationships where empathy could exist alongside mutual respect and responsibility. The relationship taught him something painful but powerful about the limits of unconditional understanding. You can deeply understand someone and still decide they are unhealthy for your life. You can forgive someone without reopening the door they repeatedly used to hurt you. You can love someone's wounded side without volunteering yourself as its permanent emotional battlefield, and you can remain compassionate without sacrificing your dignity, identity, boundaries, or inner peace. Sometimes the empath does not become cold, he becomes wiser about where compassion truly belongs. He stops confusing potential with reality and stops mistaking suffering for proof of love. The final lesson is simple: healthy love should not require one person to disappear. If understanding always flows one direction, the relationship becomes emotional servitude instead of partnership. He was an empath, she was narcissistic, but his greatest victory was choosing himself, not because he stopped caring, but because he finally understood himself deserved care too.